Okay, so the area that I'm most interested in terms of free will is when it comes to thresholds, right? And this is the whole thing about getting to a threshold and you have to make a choice, right? And a lot of people, when they get to that threshold, which for me, okay, there's many thresholds in life, but the one that I'm talking about is the threshold where you are about to come into your calling. You're looking at that open door and you go, okay, this is the job that is my calling in life. This is what I've meant to do. This is what God wants me to do. This is what God's promised me. And you get to that doorway and you have to make a choice, right? There are basically spiritual guardians on the doorway and they will demand a sacrifice. And when you go to God and you ask him what to do, there's absolute silence. And a lot of people just go, I don't know what to do because God is not answering me. You go, no, he won't. Because it's not God's choice. It's your choice. And this is the moment where free will is so important because basically it's all about you choosing whether or not you're going to be committed to God. Right? Are you going to make that sacrifice or not? Now, the answer is yes, you are. You shouldn't, but you will. And that's the reason why most people fail to get into their calling, because they basically have made some kind of sacrifice to one of the threshold guardians, these spirits that guard the doorways. Right? We either sacrifice somebody else, and that can be in many ways. We can backstab people. We can, sacrifice our families in various different ways. We can, make all sorts of different sacrifices, right? That's sacrificing somebody else. We can sacrifice ourselves by self-sabotaging, or we can sacrifice the honor of God, and usually, well, actually always, the honor of God will always be involved with it, one of the first two anyway. So these are the three ways that we are sacrificing. However, what we should be doing is going, excuse me, you've asked for a sacrifice? What do you mean? Jesus is already the all-sufficient sacrifice for me to pass over into my calling. I don't need anything else. Now, basically, the threshold guardians are going to laugh in our face and go, yeah, right, okay, let's see if you really believe that. If under pressure, if under wasting, if under retaliation, you actually believe that, right? And what we find is, no, we don't. Sooner or later, we just go, okay, we'll make the choice that we're going to give in and we're going to make some kind of sacrifice. And so here's the moment when free will is so significant, because what we've done is we've chosen not to be committed to God, not to believe in the atonement, right? And what we actually need to do at this time is realize that there's nothing we can do to believe in the atonement any more than we do. Most people make the mistake of believing what I need is more faith. And actually what they usually need is one of the gifts, the fruit of the Spirit, right? Rather than faith, right? Although faithfulness is a gift of the Spirit, right? But fruit of the Spirit, sorry.
Yeah.
But the whole thing about choice is something that is absolutely so significant, right? Particularly when it comes to something like a double bind, right? Usually a double bind, we can put them on ourselves or we can have them put on us by other people, right? And breaking that double bind is absolutely impossible. Because when we've put them on ourselves, what we've done is we've decided that I don't trust God any more than, I've reached the limit of my trust in God. I cannot go a single step further. So in order to keep ourselves safe, we create this double bind, right? We can't go any further, but we can always go to God. Oh, well, look, I can't get any further because of a double bind, right? And the first time I realized this was when I was talking to God and I was saying, look, I've been asking you for 20 years about this double bind. And one of the most common, which is the one I had, was time and money, right? If I have the time to do what I believe is your calling for me, I don't have the money. And I've tried to live by faith and it hasn't worked, right? And if I have the money, I don't have the time because I have the money because I'm working, right? Which is limiting my time. And I've been praying about this for 20 years. And finally, the Lord said to me, well, you know why I haven't answered that? And I said, no, I don't. He said, because you don't want me to. And I went, let me search my heart here. And I went, yeah, you're right. I've been asking you for something that I don't want. That's just why you haven't answered. Because you know my heart, right? Anyway, so I worked out what the double bind was, right, about whatever. And I said, this has grown up because I reached the limit of my trust in you 20 years ago and I haven't moved a single toenail forward in that 20 years. Right? And I said, and I am too scared to break that double bind. I am terrified. The very thought of breaking it is absolutely frightening beyond belief. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Lord, only you can break this double bind. And I know that the moment you try to do, I'll say stop. So please ignore my free will. In this particular instance, because I know that you will not ignore my free will most times, but the only way to break this double bind is to actually get you to ignore my no, which is going to come up the moment you actually start to break the double bind. I'm going to, no, too scary. No, back out and stop. So I said to him, okay, you can ignore my free will for this. So he did. I spent 3 days in absolute panic and terror. And at the end of it, I went, why didn't I do this 20 years ago?
Wow.
Because although 3 days is really, really bad, you look at the waste of 20 years and you go, if I'd done this 20 years ago, I would have had all that time in my calling.
Yeah. And so what did it look like for you when that bind was actually broken? Like, if you give us before and after.
Before, the freedom to actually choose, right? Because now you're actually in a space where you can go, well, do I want to do this or do I want to do that, instead of going, all right, now I don't have the time and I don't, or the money, right? And so suddenly it's a space where you go, okay, I do have the time, right? And I may not be having, bucket loads of money, but I have sufficient money to be able to do this, right? And I also have more than enough to be generous as well. So I'm not at survival level, that whole covenant with death thing about you just get survival, right? I can actually, give money away as well. So, there is more than enough. So, yes, it's this incredibly terrifying space for a couple of days while the Lord is just going, yeah, okay, I'm going to break it, right? And I'm going to ignore your no, right? While you sit in this panic of, yeah, I'm sort of terrified at what you're doing, Lord.
And so then, yeah, beforehand, it was like you said, the restraint for time for money. Then afterwards, pretty much after 3 days.
Yeah, 3 days was just like, and at the end of it, it was just sort of like, well, that's over, and why didn't I do it 20 years ago?
And then like practically what happened? You got into a position where you had more time and more money to do what you needed to
Yeah,
do.
exactly.
Literally after 3 days.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. That's awesome.
Mm, mm.
Those 3 days would have been. Yeah, why do you think we're so scared of that? Because isn't that what, like, wouldn't it feel great now, being like, okay, this is what God wants me to do, and I can do it.
I think the issue is that you don't realize that you've created the double bind because of your lack of trust in God, right? And you've got to get to the point of realizing, well, I've been here 20 years, nothing's going to change. You know, do I have any more trust in God than I did 20 years ago? No, I certainly don't. Is that going to change in the next 20 years? No, it's not going to. In fact, I've grown quite comfortable here. You know, I did say to the Lord, look, you know, I feel like I'm living on the margins of a desert, but that's okay. It's not really comfortable, but it's not really uncomfortable. I've grown to like it here. This is my comfort zone. Right? To do anything else is to risk, and that is why I've actually gone, no, please, double bind, put it over myself, and put it over myself in such a way that I can't break it.
Wow.
And I think that's what a lot of people do. They have created double binds for themselves because people do reach the limit of their trust in God.
How does one know where when they've reached the limit of the trust in God, and how to actually push that beyond that?
I think you would know after a couple of years. You wouldn't know to start with, right? Because, okay, you're moving forward. And certainly, you should know before 20 years. But when you're asking for something that you know the Lord wants for you and you're getting no answer, I reckon even 5 years is too much. You just go, all right, you do have to have patience, but you don't have to have too much patience, or else you're putting yourself into the hand of the spirit of wasting.
Yeah.
I found that what I've got to do with the Lord is ask him, what is the limit of the timing here? I know I need to be patient, right? Because that was, one of my excuses. Lord, you're teaching me patience. And finally he said to me one day, listen, you learned that decades ago. Right? No, your problem is that you are too patient, right? You put yourselves into the hands of wasting. And you have to actually sort of go, okay, now, Lord, all right, I need to be patient. So how long should I give these people, right, before I look at an answer? Right? And then how do I approach it, particularly with thresholds that are not necessarily your thresholds, because sometimes you're on other people's thresholds. And that can be very dangerous because, of course, they're looking what they're going to sacrifice. And sometimes that sacrifice is you.
Wow.
And so you've actually, sometimes once you get into your mind what a threshold looks like, right, and that only comes with basic experience of going, oh, wait a minute, what's happening here? And you go, well, this is not my threshold. Is it their threshold? So I remember one stage going, this is just taking way too long, and it's extending out, and, getting no answers and whatever. And so finally I said to the Lord, is this their threshold? Have they never done this particular thing before? because when you do something for the first time, it's a threshold. Not necessarily a threshold into your calling, but it's still a threshold, right? And it indicates how you're going to work, right, when it comes to the threshold into your calling. What the kind of reactions you're going to have. So when you're looking at somebody else and you're going, oh, wait a minute, okay, so you got to ask the right questions. Have you never done this job before? Oh, and they'll say, oh, no, this is my first time. And that point you go, okay, I've got to change my prayers. Totally, right? I was concentrating on getting an answer. Now I need to actually pray that they won't sacrifice me and they won't sacrifice themselves.
Wow. So things can really change. You can be praying for one thing, but actually end up,
Yeah. Once you realize it's a threshold, you actually got to change the nature of your prayers.
Yeah.
Right? That they will make the right choices, that they won't sacrifice anybody.
Yeah.
They will be timely about things and communicate, because on thresholds, communication gets really, really dodgy.
Yeah. Man, that's a tough one because, if you're at someone else's threshold, that's that's tough because they have a big part to play in that.
Exactly. And if you don't realize you're there, you can actually get smashed without having any input at all, really. It's not, you just happen to be there.
Yeah. And again, we keep coming back to the same thing, but that's why I'm guessing it's important to have that relationship with God so we can reveal that to you. Say, hey, this is actually for this person and this needs to happen. And
That's right.
We kind of keep coming back to that bottom line. And it's a beautiful one, though, because that's the part that isn't actually that complex.
No.
Like, out of all the stuff that can seem quite overwhelming, the part that's not complex is, okay, just whenever you can, go to God. Every time you're upset, it just continuously go to Him, and that's
exactly.
That's really the bottom line, which I think is really, really cool. But yeah, I think we've covered quite a bit. It's been really awesome. I mean, there's always so much to talk about. But
absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, okay, you want to talk about things that's going to take me years to, how many years do we have on this video?
Yeah, exactly. But for me, I don't know if it's necessarily why it's in my heart, but I think just simplifying it for people, like not thinking, like I said before, being perfect. It's just about coming to God.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, so many people talk to me about thresholds and all of the different aspects of threshold guardians and all of the different obstacles. And yes, there's huge numbers of them. But the absolute bottom line of it, and I always say this, is I would not have to tell anybody anything if your relationship with Jesus was such that you could go to Him and say, Lord, in this particular instance, I don't believe that you're capable of doing this. Help my unbelief. Because that's what it comes down to. It comes down to the relationship and where you are in that relationship and the level of trust that you feel. And that is really what it's all about.
Yeah. And building that trust with God, that comes, like we said, that comes from building a relationship. You don't grow to trust someone who's a stranger. You trust someone after years or whatever. After getting
exactly,
to know them. Yeah.
And some people think that a covenant's going to happen straight away, and as I've said, there's more than one, right? And these happen over a period of time because they're all about relationship. And if you look at Abraham as the example, right, he doesn't even get a covenant for 12 years, right? He's got a relationship with God for at least 12 years before he gets the first covenant. And then there's another 13 or 14 years before he gets the second and third covenants, right? And you just go, well, why is that? And you go, well, because relationship isn't built in a day. And commitment doesn't come, instantly.
No.
You cannot show commitment and covenant loyalty to God. Like, okay, I want God to answer this, and the answer is based upon my covenant commitment to Him. Well, He'll know, and He does know, but you haven't demonstrated anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, well, I think